So to start us off today, just talk with the people near you about a funny mishap, a sad mishap. Talk about vocabulary. What have you heard from your kids? Does anybody have a story profound enough to share with the whole group? Maybe Fickle Finger, your neighbor, if they had a really good one. So I can share Jerry's story because she's not in here. Jerry was talking about math relays, and they had just a math problem where, this person had spent this much money and how much money were they left with. And so when they were writing it up, they wrote up their answer. So-and-so wasted this much money. And that was the only vocabulary they had for spent. We know, and there's a lot of research that shows that a lot of our kids are coming in with a huge vocabulary deficit relative to their suburban counterparts. So vocabulary is a really big and important topic that we're going to focus on today. Our goal is to identify and explore critical components of vocabulary instruction across the day to affect how many words kids know. So the amount of words matters, but then also how well they know them. Can they use them in different contexts? What if the word has multiple meanings? Do they know the nuances of that word, or maybe like the connotation, when that word might be appropriate versus when it might feel offensive? So getting to both of these pieces across your day is what we're hoping to get to. A statistic that really has been that has made this more important to me is if you think of, and I should have made that circle smaller, if you think of typical common spoken vocabulary, you've got about 10,000 words. So if we're growing our vocabulary, just common day to day, we're going to hit about 10,000 words. Versus, if you think of common words in print, that number shifts to 1 million. So if we're only talking to our kids in normal day to day, when they go into print, they are hugely behind. So vocabulary becomes this really important thing, and I feel like I should make this into an apple or something. I made them separate last time I had more space. And I'm pulling my information from a couple sources. Much of this started, I guess the origins of this would be when Jerry, Susan, Emily, and I did when you guys read a Marzano book last year in book study, we did a vocabulary book. So that was kind of the origins. But then this year we've been able to rope Angela in, who has some Marzano specific background, here's the research they're pulling from. And then the other place that I've gotten a lot of my information is our literacy audit, both the original literacy audit that was done 6 years ago now, and then the one that was just done last year. Because it's a lot of information to synthesize. So we just tried to highlight, okay, here's the patterns, here's how we can name it, here's how we can make it doable. Before we get into content, on a sticky note, I want you to jot down, think of your kids and what they know about you. If I went up to one of your kids and I said, what does Miss Adams love? What would they tell me about you? Oh, she loves K-State. Oh, she loves pianos. Unicorns are her spirit animal. What do they know? A big idea that I am going to assume, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I think that it's becoming common language, is tiered vocabulary, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Can I just quick show it? This is something, yes, I've heard this before. I know what you're talking about. No, let me see where we are. The brief description, tier 1 words are the words that you typically know. They're day-to-day common expressions that you hear in just daily conversation. Tier 3, on the other hand, is like scientific specific or content specific, not used in other areas, vocabulary words. So those words that you might have to learn if you're taking chemistry, but you're not going to hear them at the breakfast table. Tier 2 is the words that come in between. They're less common, but they're connected to academic content, and they will come up in that day-to-day conversation. Those are the words that we find our kids typically don't know. And even if the question came up, well, what if they don't even know tier 1 words? Shouldn't we be focusing on those? The conversations that we had led us to know. Because those they're going to be more likely to get in their day-to-day experiences. And if we keep our focus there, they're not going to grow into, we know the brain is only as complex as it needs to be. So if we're staying in that tier 1, we're not going to get to pull them into that tier 2 vocabulary. From the reading and the processing that we've done, looks like, and this feels really different. This is the one I probably had to wrap my head around the most. Ideal situation is that you're going to teach 5 to 7 words per week. So that's only 1 to 2 words per subject. So that's a different part. This isn't just like, oh, fortunately, that's a good one, I'm going to teach that one. These are academic words. So 5 to 7 per week, academic words, tier 2. So this might be in your fraction unit. You might talk about the phrase least common denominator. So that's something that's critical content for that unit that also has high frequency and other contents. So they're going to come across that expression in a lot of different scenarios. We can say, oh, well, what's the least common denominator with this group? Right? It's something that is critical to the content and also frequently used. And the literacy audit actually recommends that schools come together and generate this list by grade level. So put a team of people, look at your curriculum. All right, so in math, across the year, what is the critical content we need our kids to have? All right, what are 30 words that they're going to have to know? Another way to think of this is you're providing them background information. Research shows that when it comes to reading success, your background information is a higher predictor than your IQ. So think of the vocabulary, this critical content we're focusing on. We are providing that background information that's essential to them understanding. It's easy to think about vocabulary as the separate thing, but really we are pulling it in and fully embedding it within the content. I'm going to pass these around. I'll get a few. This is just, Angela's done this before, so this is the list they pulled together to give us an idea of what it might look like and sound like. Just kind of pass them around, and if you want to snag a copy, you're fine. If not, I have a copy that I can add to. The other place I've seen a good book, in this book on the back, they have just a core list of, for early elementary, what are some word ideas, middle and high. So I'll pass these around so you can just kind of get a sense of what's there. Oh, so thinking about unit planning, right? Bridge that, so as you and your PLC are coming together and doing a unit plan, could you have the conversation, what is the critical content? What is the critical vocabulary that we need to make sure they have as you're doing that unit plan? You can bridge it one more to scales. So putting in that vocabulary on the scale on level 2, that's the vocabulary that's going to get dropped right in there. That's the vocabulary you're going to monitor. Okay, lots. Like that was the biggest, like that's was the biggest shift for me from what I had been perceiving. So take just 20, 30 seconds, process with the people around you. Talk about it. What do you think? Process. Do you guys mind if I share a highlight? So in this group, one of the things that surfaced as we were kind of just processing this was about, on this 5 to 7 academic words, tier 2 per week, that if we think about it in the context of what we're already doing, of unit planning, that's one way that we can be just a little bit more strategic in something we're already doing and get a huge amount of mileage. And then also know there's discussion, nothing in stone planned, to put a team together this summer to get a good start with for this list. So then we'd be cohesive as a school. Next part, when we're still in the realm of intentional word learning, 6 steps surface again and again. You'll hear them in different programs, worded different ways and re-articulated, but there's a lot of common threads. So you've got a cutout of the 6 steps. Work with the people around you, put them in order. Know that today is an overview. So this is a ton of information, kind of giving you the big picture, but any of these things could become a rabbit hole we go down into and go deeper into and broaden our understanding. This is just to give you big picture. All right, so step 1 is always the teacher provides a description. The Marzano literature is really keen on calling it a description. Everything else calls it a student-friendly definition. There's a learner's dictionary embedded in, I think it's Webster's, if you Google it, it pops up, that has these pre-generated that are really handy for you. But we know when we send kids to a dictionary, there's at least 5 words in the definition that they have to look up. So you're pulling together a description or a kid-friendly definition. That is step 1. And you're telling it to them. Because when we make them guess, sometimes they guess wrong, and then you have to counteract that wrong guess a whole lot. So if this is an essential content, this might not be the time to just make them guess. This is just a telling them in a kid-friendly way. Step 2, they have to be able...
Real quick?
Yeah.
So where's synonyms again? Because I find that works.
Sure.
In the description.
So when you're talking, so you're going to tell them, here's what this word means. So talking to them, part of your conversation could be, here's some synonyms. Oh, okay, good. Sure.
Okay. All right.
Synonyms actually come in a lot, so we'll hit them a couple times. Next, and know that these don't have to be done in the same lesson, right? This might be, I talked through it on day 1 and 2 of the unit, but then by day 4, hey, tell me what this means. That's when we're talking. Or your exit slip. Write down what this means. So they're not just copying your definition. This is them. Can they say it? Because if they can't use it. So we're trying to get to that deeper level. Next, students construct a picture, symbol, or graphic representing the term or phrase. So this is another one. It's really tempting to draw something and have them draw it. But the point of this is to link to how they're processing it and what they know about it. Just drawing a picture is fine. I found some other little ways it might work, right? Doing a little, and I'll just pass these around. You can grab one. I thought there was only going to be about 22 based on the sign up, so you might have to share with your neighbor, and if you don't really want one, pass it on to the next. So it can be a web, it can be a word splash, it can be just a picture, it can be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to just be a picture, but the important thing is that they're the ones doing the processing. All right, the next 3 steps, you honestly could have put them in any order. Because the order does not matter. They call it 6 steps like it does matter. Those are interchangeable. So periodically, they're going to go back to these 5 to 7. This isn't every single word. This is these critical words. And we're going to go deeper, and we're going to think about this word. Miss Conover, I heard this word. Oh, wow, and tell me more. Oh, do you, yeah, it has this, like, you're going to have that conversation about it. Okay? Periodically, students discuss the phrase with one another. Okay, during guided reading seat work today, sit down with your partner in your reading group, go through your vocabulary notebook, and talk about 4 of these words. Look at each other's entries, see if you want to add anything to yours. This is getting kids to talk. And finally, periodically, students play games, or students play with the terms or phrases in academic games. In 4th grade, one of the PLCs has spent a lot of time diving deeper into vocabulary. And this is where they've spent the most amount of time. Where we started is that these games feel really big and hard. Like, oh, I've got to go home and make Jeopardy. So it doesn't actually, but where we kind of landed is, oh, there's some pretty quick and easy ones that we like. So some of the ones that we've used that we really like, and let me remind you, we're just talking about these 5 to 7. So that helps keep this manageable because it is still one more thing. Let's see, synonyms and antonyms. So I'm going to say a word. You tell me a synonym. So I'm going to go to our word wall. All right, I want a synonym for Fort Knox, and I'm going to Miss Estelle. Okay, I want a synonym for, same for anonym. So that's, when we say academic word game, it doesn't have to be Jeopardy. It can be Jeopardy. Jeopardy would be great. Especially if we have this list, and you know what words are coming. Could you make Jeopardy? Sure. But do you have to make Jeopardy? No. Right and wrong. So you've got 10 minutes before lunch. You've got a spare time. All right, so I'm going to pick a word from the word wall, and I'm going to say it in a sentence, and you tell me, did I use it right or wrong? Correct or incorrect? This one's super manageable, but very impactful. Write a question that uses the vocabulary word. And that is the game, and I'm going to ask one of you this question. Quinteros, you're in that PLC. Can I put you in the hot spot? Can you talk about having tried any of these and how it, I feel like it's anticlimactic when I talk about it. And in our PLC meeting, it was really exciting. Like, oh, this worked.
We do, well, in my class, we've been working with the match game. The students write the word, the vocabulary word on a note card and a definition on the other, and then they just mix them, and together they flip to see, did I make the right match of the word and what the definition is. And they get so into those, and then they keep them in their heads, and they remember a lot of them, and they're even starting to use some of those words in their everyday speech. So, like even my ESL kiddos that are the non-speakers are starting to use those and can read them and understand what they mean as well.
So they're not just getting the how many words, but they're also getting the how well they know them. They're hitting both pieces. Awesome. All right. Oh, so I'll pass these around. You can check them out. I tried to tab. So it took us a lot of time to get down to a few just doable activities. Taboo was the other one we had on our list where, right, like you could yeah, it's manageable. You make a list of 5 words they can't say, cards on the other side. But it took us a long time, and so we dug into a lot of different resources. I've used the orange tabs to kind of highlight places in these books. I'll pass them around, but know that you can also come and check them out. This one, I believe we have a couple extra copies that will be around next year if you want to check out. The others, I don't know if we have too many around, but there's at least some in the IC office. Yes. Let's take 30 seconds and process the 6 steps. Just talk with the neighbor. We're still in the realm of intentional teaching. And the next 2 pieces go well together. So you've intentionally selected vocab that goes with your critical content. You need to have a word wall. You need to have a place they can look up and reference. In primary grades, This is different than your sight word wall. You might already have a sight word wall, but this is a wall that includes essential content to what you're teaching. What makes this doable is that you don't have to leave it all up all the time. So if you're in your social studies unit about the Revolutionary War, you're going to pull out the critical content, the critical vocabulary. You've got those words up, and you're going to take them down when you're done. You're going to monitor for understanding. Oh, they have these. I don't need to leave them up on my wall all year. So then that makes it like it's not just growing and growing and growing. Yes. And you're going to pair it with, they need a vocabulary notebook. This can be done in a whole lot of ways. But it makes it so you really don't have to keep them on your wall, because if they do need to come back and reference it, they have it where they can go back and reference it. In the GVC, I can't remember precisely where, but if you look for it, you might find it. And if you don't, come see me and we'll redig together, because I can put my fingers on it pretty easily. There is a nice, probably 4-page article. It's a quick and easy read about word walls and how you might think about them and how you might try them. Kind of the highlights are, you could put them in color coded, like if you want it just in one space, all right, math words in green, social studies words in blue, sight words in orange. If you want them in different spaces, organized by subject. I believe where the critical walkaways, but that's there if that's kind of an area you want to dig deeper in. But the important part is that you have it and that it's paired with a place for them to write it down. In vocabulary notebooks, the important thing about them is that they're getting them in their own words. So this isn't, all right, here's our vocabulary for the week, write this down, write down my definition. This is something that they're going to own. You also want to provide, I would almost do 1 page per word. And if we're only doing 5 to 7 a week, what's 200, 135, 200, I don't know, someone do the math for me, per year. So it's not like it's going to get overwhelming if you do 1 word per page, but here's an example of what it might look like. But all this white space, if you wanted to go back and say, oh, for your, we've got, in science today, I want you to go in and add 3 synonyms to our word. There's white space that you could have them go back and re-examine their knowledge, add to it. There's space. If you have 10 words on a page, there's not any space for them to go back into it.
And then you don't really put any importance on alphabetical order.
No. And it's a small enough number. I mean, you could.
But that's where things get undoable for me. That's where I get to the point where, like, okay, this is such a great idea, but how many pages for A, and how many pages for B, and how many pages for C?
And that's,
so I like giving permission to just, this is the first word we put in, this is the last word we put in.
you could also,
And
let's
you
say
could
you have
words that were question marks for you or something like that.
we have a science notebook. You could also put your science vocabulary in your science notebook, if that makes it more doable. So yes, give yourself lots of permission for this to be messy. This is another area that the PLC, that we spent a lot of time like, oh, how do we make this? Like, we tried it a couple different ways. Where they landed, which is awesome, is vocabulary. So instead of an actual notebook, they have their cards. The 4x6 work a little bit better on one, and then they have a formula to what they have to write on the other. But then you have all this space where they can go back, add a graphic. And then when it comes to playing those academic games, oh, go through and do matching. Go through and quiz with a partner. Flip them all upside down and reorganize them. Sort your words into 2 categories. It just makes it excessively doable, but it's super messy. We're okay with that. We color coded them, had little codes to make it like, oh, if I can't remember what card goes with it, they only have 2 cards per word. So it's worked for them. Find a thing that works for you. Play with different things until, and I'm going to pass these around, but try not to make sure they come back to the bag when they've been around. We talked about how only about 10,000 words are common in spoken language compared to 1 million are common in everyday print. Like, these aren't rare words, these are common words in printed language. So the statistic that really jumped out at me for this part is, all right, so I did do the math, and I typed it in my notes because I'm not good at doing math on the fly. So if we're doing 5 to 7 a week, and we have 35 weeks in the school year, we're only introducing 175 to 350 words a year. Okay. But if kids read 500,000 to 1 million words a year, which we know is a lot, but if they're reading that many, they can learn 3,000 words in a year. So this next part gets into incidental word learning, what they're going to do on their own when they're reading, what they're going to get through deeper conversations and intentional, but it's not the couple hundred words you're introducing. This is a mental model for them, but this is where we can get a lot of bang and a lot of mileage when we're thinking about, wow, our kids are coming with a deficit. Our kids need a bunch more words. This gets some mileage. So it's incidentally, what can we do? Word consciousness is the first strategy that I want to talk about with incidental word learning. Remember that sticky note you wrote on? Who can tell me what's something your kids know you love? Ms. Damian, what do your kids know you love?
Learning.
Okay, awesome. Ms. Quantz, what do your kids know you love? Harrison told me yesterday that you are tied for his second favorite teacher, by the way. Ms. Quantz was my son's first grade teacher.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Yes. Okay, Ms. Quantz, what do your kids know you love?
Shoes.
Shoes. Awesome. Ms. Kidwell, what do your kids know you love?
Family.
Awesome. Okay, so now the next thing, I want your kids to know you love words. Right? Like, that's going to become something you are now passionate about. I give you full permission to fake it. Right? Like, you are going to make this cool in your classroom to get at this incidental word learning, to get at that 3,000 words. So this is your new favorite thing. We're excited. And just that alone is going to increase the word consciousness. Raising the word consciousness in your classroom matters. Okay, so this is a little chapter from Donovan's Word Jar that gets into word consciousness. It all began one morning at the breakfast table. Donovan was staring at the back of a cereal box when he noticed the word nutrition. Nutrition, he said slowly. And then he said it again, nutrition. He liked the way the word slid down his tongue and rolled off his lips. This was a word he had never noticed before, and the word made him smile. Mom, Donovan said, watching his mother pack his lunch, do you like the word nutrition? I don't know, I never thought about it before, she answered, dropping a packet of raisins into his bag. Me neither, but guess what? I am going to start paying extra attention to words from now on. I bet there are trillions of words out there, words I've never noticed. On his way to school that morning, Donovan discovered the word ballyhoo blazing across a billboard. Wow, was that there all the time? He asked himself. And that same afternoon, he noticed the word boutique written on the window of his mother's favorite shop. Gee, new words are everywhere, Donovan said. Maybe I should start writing them down. I don't want to forget any of them. That evening, while he was digging around in his father's tool chest, Donovan saw the word pincers written on a wooden handle. He pulled a strange-looking tool from the chest. It looked like a crab claw, and he laughed. All right, I'm going to stop there. I've read this book to a group of kids in summer school. Oh my gosh, they went crazy. He eventually starts his own word collection, and he's got this big jar of words. And then we had to make a word jar, but we had to make it in a big poster, and they were always coming in. So making words cool and building this word consciousness. will go a long way. Next, increase student talk. Kids have to use the words. That's where we often see a breakdown. We'll say, oh, well, we know them. They know them. They know what they mean. They're just not using them. You've got to bridge that. You've got to give them time and opportunities to talk, because if they're not using them, they probably don't actually know them. Sometimes sometimes you have to hear a word up to 17 times. And it seems like me and Jerry or Susan were talking about the other day. For us, sometimes it's a lot more than that before it sticks solidly. Teach them that. Guys, before we know what Fort Knox really is, we might have to use it 20 different times before it really stays with us and becomes a word we own forever. That encourages them to start using it and trying it and talking about it more often. Now, on this one, remember, this is just 5 to 7 a week. It keeps it small. Over here, it can get really big. So don't make it as scaffolded and intentional and systematic, and you've got to have a notebook for it with organized pages, and you've got to just have them talk more about words. I mean, you have them talk more about everything, but encourage them to use the appropriate words. So we're going to talk about characters in this story. Let's make sure we're using the vocabulary that goes with that. All right, take a second and process, and I'll get the next ones up, and then we'll shift to the next one. Then some strategies for, okay, if I don't know it, what do I do that's doable? Recognize word parts. It seems like 3rd and 4th grade are big heavy hitters for prefixes and suffixes. Think of that as empowering them to determine word meanings. So as you guys are talking about prefixes and suffixes, oh, this is a way that will help you figure out the meaning of words, the unfamiliar words when you come to them in text.
I do that a lot. Just put the word, whatever is critical on the board. You see, does this big word make you think of any words that you know already? And a lot of times they'll pick out the root right in there, and so then we'll have a chance to talk about it, and then these words are related, and I think that it seems pretty powerful. They all seem to feel like, oh, well, my guess was correct. That's kind of nice, and and unintentionally or incidentally, we've connected more than one word to another.
Nice. And then you're giving them that model to do that thinking on their own independently. Another piece of this is helping them learn to use their resources. I know a lot of people who really like knowing how to use a paper dictionary is still very important in their classroom. And I know people who are like, meh, this will take me 2 hours to teach. It's 2 hours I don't have to give. Look it up online. I'm okay with whatever approach as long as that you're giving them resources. That's the part that matters. So, but I wouldn't point them towards a standard dictionary. I'd point them towards a learner's dictionary, something that's already got kid-friendly built into it, or a thesaurus. Sometimes, thinking about those synonyms and antonyms again. All right, well, can I find a word in the thesaurus and find 5 other words that mean close? It's going to at least get me to the right ballpark. So giving them tools and strategies are going to increase that incidental word learning. All right, so let's pause. So that's all I have for incidental word learning. So take a minute and go back to your notes page, organize your thinking around what was important there. Yeah, big picture, this is an overview. We could go deep into any one of these. Okay, someone else?
Supplying resources and strategies for kids and making it knowing what they need to do. And it's okay to ask a friend, it's okay to, but we just want them really thinking as they're reading and really, stopping and thinking, and then they should be able to know, like, what strategies they can use and what resources they can use at any time. And it's okay to use those resources and do it. That's what good readers do.
Yeah. And you'll think they're really cool if they go and use them because you love words so much. I'm like, look, Miss Berry, I found the word. I use and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love the thesaurus. Right? Like, you've got to be that excited. It's okay to be over the top. All right. Well, I wanted to close today. I don't know. This is a common text that I know many have seen. But I love the poem at the beginning of it. It's called Sticks and Stones May Break My Bones. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words could never hurt me. And this I knew was surely true, and truth could not desert me. But now I know it is not so. I've changed the latter part, for sticks and stones may break the bones, but words can break the heart. Sticks and stones may break the bones, but leave the spirit whole. But simple words can break the heart, or silence crush the soul. On that note, thank you very much for being here on a Wednesday and present.